Well, warm welcome. For those I haven't had a chance to meet over time, my name is Tom Hassan, and I am president of School Year Abroad, a wonderful organization and a wonderful role to play in that organization. And so we're delighted to be with you this afternoon. Joining me is Holland Goss Lynch, who's France class of 86, and she is also the chair of the SYA Board of Trustees. So welcome, Holland. Thank you for being part of today's webinar here. And later on, we will invite our special guests to join us. But first, Holland and I would love to give you a little update of what's going on with SYA, both in terms of our schools and both in terms of our leadership work as SYA continues to evolve over time. So again, welcome all. Just wanted to say that we've launched another school year and very successfully. And this is actually our third year since the year that we could not run because of the pandemic. So we're already in year 3 post-pandemic. Happy to report that we're off to a great start. Those intrepid SYAers used to be that they would jump on a ship, as those alums who were there on this from a while back remember that voyage. But now we congregate at Logan Airport. Most of the students head on over with a chaperone and jump right into their new lives overseas. So delighted to report that's happened. In fact, the SYA Italy group left a little bit earlier than the other groups because there's a wonderful feast in Feast of St. Rosa in Viterbo, Italy, that we have the kids and their host families all gather. And it's just a really immersive experience right from day one in Italy. So all of them have been there at least for a month, and wonderful reports I hear. What I would say is that there's going to be in that group some very similar things that generation of SYAers before them have experienced, and meeting other students from all over the country who decided also to take a leap to get out of their comfort zone and to really explore a different culture, a different language. And so that is tired and true, and people really are inspired by that mission. The other thing that they find is that they will find a faculty, a native faculty there, and a lot of the names are names you're going to recognize. We have a very, very stable faculty of people right there. We also, as folks remember, we hire a math and an English teacher each year from one of our sending schools to come on over to keep our students whole in those topics. So those two topics are obviously taught in English, but the other ones are in the target language. So it's great to see. Now, there are some differences that I thought I would bring up because it's always fun to hear how SYA has continued to change. One of them is that while we have students from all over the place in schools, we have an even more diverse group of students in terms of ethnic composition, but also in terms of where they're coming from. We actually this year have 123 different high schools represented in our SYA population. Out of that group, we have 44 member schools, and interestingly enough, 44% of our entire student population are from those 44 schools. So it includes our founding schools of Exeter, Andover, and St. Paul's, and a number of other member schools that we have. We also have 12% of our students this year from public high schools. It's hard for us to get in to recruit to public high schools. So oftentimes those students find us through the internet or through word of mouth. And so it's always fun for us to have a diversity, again, of students in terms of their background. So we welcome that diversity. And I'll make a plug here that I think what we have found time and time again, actually, is that students' word of mouth is the way they find out about SYA. So I'd ask all the people on this call and other SYAers to really spread the word. And you don't have to spread it often, spread it early to students and their families. They really do respect and listen to our alums who've been through the program. So I'd ask, that's a great way for you to help out SYA. So another piece that's changed over time, and those who've been on these calls with me have heard me talk about this, but is really using the place that we're in as a classroom. So obviously we are in our particular classrooms in our cities, but we want them to get out of their seats, use the local area, what's going on. It can be the museum, it can be a special exhibit in town. And we don't confine it just to the Zaragoza or Rennes or Viterbo. We actually expand that to greater parts of the country. So any educational travel we do is really grounded in how can we teach the students here as best we can about culture and language. And so we're using all around us as our classroom. We've also, as an educator, I'm very happy to say that we've evolved some of our beginning and end to really have a definition here. The beginning, we have an immersion unit that lasts about a week and a half, where we really don't get into the classes themselves yet, but we get them to know each other, to get to know the faculty, obviously the health and safety rules, their host families, the area, using their language. So we're designing assignments that really, so for instance, with their host families, they have to kind of draw a family tree because they'll be meeting a lot of these people over time. So there's one way to kind of get yourself feeling grounded before you jump into your math course or whatever. So it's a way, this immersion unit, to really bond the students. We usually get them to travel just a little bit with each other, and clearly connecting with all the new faces and new people in their lives. So that's good. And then at the end of each term, we do a special project of the students' total interest. And we ask them not to write a term paper. That's the last thing we want them to do. We want them to be immersed in conversations with people in something that they're really interested in, and then report back to other students about it. So I can think of two quick examples for you. In France, we've had a young woman who is very interested in politics and wanted to interview a lot of the women politicians in Rennes. Actually brought a few into class, talk about that. And so kind of bringing her interests, sharing them, and really understanding. And secondly, there was a young man in Italy a few years ago who ended up many afternoons spent with an old cobbler and chatting. And then he and the cobbler made a pair of shoes. And so it was a way to really kind of immerse himself into something very hands-on and learn the stories of this older gentleman's life. So those are just quick examples, but kind of fun ways that we really do that. I would say that I've used the term evolving over time. When I first started at SYA, this is now my 8th year, we were focused heavily on this place-based curriculum, and we're constantly tweaking that, but we've done a nice job of rolling that out. So we're getting kids out of their seats into the local area. Our new kind of posture, our new focus right now is really making sure we get as strong as many kids into those seats initially through our admissions process. So we've been working over this last year and this year, the board and I, and Holland can talk some more about this, but we're working with our member schools. We've revised the agreement we have with the member schools. The nice thing is one of the major changes we made is that SYA is able to provide more financial aid for member school students than we have in the past. And that's clearly the only reason we could do that is because we had a highly successful capital campaign that ended during the pandemic. We raised more than $18 million, which is just terrific. And I thank each and every one of you for your support. But those are the kinds of things we can do because we're in a much sounder financial shape. And so that's really good. And then a few other summer projects I have been working on. One is extracurricular activities. We have a lot more students involved in those things these days. And we have coordinators in each of the areas that's part of their job to draw the connections of students into local area, into the things they want to do, whether that's ceramics, whether that's playing in the local symphony, playing soccer, whatever that is, this person does that. And so we've been working on that to make sure we offer as many options as we possibly can for students. So that's great to see. And then finally, the last piece I've been working on is NEASC, which is New England Association of Schools and Colleges. It's an accreditation body. And let me just indulge me for 2 minutes in this. It is SYA for the very first time was accredited 10 years ago. We're up for our reaccreditation. And yesterday in the email, you've probably gotten an invite for alums to fill out a simple survey. That's a standard survey from the ES. So a few of the questions don't pertain to us, but please fill that out. And it gives us information as we prepare for our next accreditation, which will last. We're in the process right now, and we'll finish up next fall. So I thank you for your help in that. So finally, before I turn it over to Holland, I do want to just thank people for your support, whether that be financial, whether that be, as I talked about earlier, spreading the word for us. There are just so many ways. And what makes me so energized is when I go out and talk to alums, how much that year has greatly positively affected their entire lives. I mean, I think it has set them on a course of open conversation, of exploration, of empathy, things that are just really special. And when I talk to prospective parents and students, I say, yes, you will come back fully immersed in the language and the culture. But what I think an adolescent really gains in that is a sense of confidence, a sense of openness, which is a real gift, and a real gift not only to them, but I think this world. So I'm inspired by SYA's mission and delighted to be part of this. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Holland, Goss, Lynch. Holland, I can't thank you enough. I'm going to say this on behalf of everyone, because being a chair of a board is a lot of work, and you do it really well. And we greatly appreciate all your effort and guiding us through some really wonderful, but these are all challenging times for all of us. And so thank you for your leadership. So with that, welcome.
Thank you so much, Tom. That's very kind. And I will say that being a board chair does come with its challenges, but it is nothing like being the head of a school, president of a school like SYA. And we, as a board, are deeply appreciative. Right back at you. We are deeply, deeply appreciative of you and your leadership and all that you bring to the smooth running of SYA. We are very, very fortunate to have you at the helm. So hello, everybody. And I echo Tom's thanks for being here, for being part of the SYA community, for supporting us in all the ways that you do. We can never say thank you enough. So we just try to say it as often as we can. And just before I jump in, I'll pick up on something else that Tom was talking about, the hearing about the experiences of alums and how they have influenced lives for many, many years. And I would say, parallel to that, I always love hearing what moves donors to give to SYA, because it is everything from cultural competence, maybe that helped you get your first job, to a deeper feeling of independence and courage to move through the world, or language. It's really, it runs the gamut, and I love hearing all of that, and have found much of that to be true in my own life. So I just would like to talk a little bit about the work of the board, particularly in this past year, and start by sharing a little bit about who we are. We are a board of 19 people, and we have a real mix on our board of life experience, relationships to SYA. We have some alums, we have some heads of member schools. I'll get to that in a second. We have other representatives from the world of education, just lots of different relationships. As parents, many different relationships exist on our board. We have a great diversity of geography from representing all parts of the country. And we're interesting because we have a mandate in our bylaws to include on that board at all times 5 heads of school. And one is a head or senior administrator from our founding schools, Andover, Exeter, St. Paul's. And that rotates between those 3 schools. And the other 4 come from our member schools. And we're very fortunate to have heads of school on our board because they bring such a depth of experience and insight into the running of a school, and it informs the work of all of us, board, and I think very helpful to Tom as well. So it really enriches our conversations in ways that we all appreciate. And they're very busy people, so we also do appreciate their time. So this last year, we spent a lot of time as a board working on what we ended up calling our strategic posture. We started by refining our mission statement. It is a great mission statement, slightly changed from what it was before to just better reflect. And I think I'll read that because it's great for everyone here to hear that. So, School Year Abroad is committed to promoting intercultural understanding and appreciation through the immersive adventure of fully engaging with different languages and peoples. SYA guides its students through a challenging curriculum focused on developing skills and cultural competencies for an increasingly interdependent world. I think it's a great mission, and one that we keep always at top of mind as we come together as a board 3 times a year for our meetings. As we developed the strategic posture, the board and the SYA leadership team worked together so that we could all move forward for the next few years with a similar vision of where we're going and what our strategy would be. And I won't get into all of the details of it, but essentially we see the next few years as an evolution of SYA. This is not a time for revolution. We're not reinventing any wheels, but we are evolving what works and making it the best we can possibly do as we move forward through these post-pandemic years, which are still very much playing out. It falls a bit into 2 categories. The inward focus, we're looking at different aspects of the program and making those better. Tom alluded to some of that, making sure our math program is as great as it can be, looking at our mental health resources. So just strengthening the program so that we have a great school, as we always have, but things always merit looking into further. And then a little bit of an outward focus. SYA exists as a partner with many different groups. And Tom had talked about our member school relationships, and these are 44 schools with which we have a close relationship. And that agreement has recently been refined, really to the benefit of both the member schools who send us terrific kids, and to us. It clarified a lot of the questions around financial assistance for those students, and also our ability to spread the word to those schools and do admissions visits and the like. So that's really enhanced those partnerships, strengthened those ties, which are so key to making SYA the place that it is. And another place where we have looked to spend some time and energy is the ever more complicated process of really just getting the kids to the different campuses. The visa process is, it's one that requires attention and focus. And so it always helps for us to strengthen the ties with the consulates and the countries that we work with to make that as smooth and efficient and easy a process as we can for families and for students. And finally, we as a board are always thinking of our fiduciary duty. That's key for us, and looking at the financial stability and sustainability of SYA. And that brings into play the work that we as a board do to help with fundraising, so important, keeping tuition in a reasonable place, and thinking about how we can provide appropriate and ample financial assistance so that we can bring all the kids to SYA that we want to bring. And that's something that is just the work of the board ongoing. And then, pertinent to today, one of the greatest things we as a board get to do is review the nominees for 2 awards that SYA offers, our Distinguished Alumni Award and our Stephen Foster Award for Exemplary Service. And as a board, we review the submissions that our community sends in, and thank you to all who have submitted nominees. And we always have a difficult time choosing from the great nominees that we have. And this year we have 2 wonderful people to celebrate. And I can jump right in. Tom, do you have any other points that you'd like to make before we introduce Kelly and Anne?
Yeah, well, why don't we do that? I have just a few questions that have been popping up, so let me do a few of those, Great. And then we'll do that. We'll go back to other questions. And there was one question that was come up about a child who's coming in the spring. And for those who don't know, we have offered on a very limited basis some semester slots for students because usually those students are involved in something that they can't tear away from their school, or there's a financial reason they can't come for the whole year. So that we've offered on, again, a limited basis. And the question really is, the students coming in the spring, how can they kind of get prepared for that to immerse themselves with the other students? And it's interesting because some of the students say, watch movies in that target language and don't look at the subtitles. So that's one common thing. But also, I would just say that actually the semester 2 students come in because they're usually studying the language in the fall, that they're right there, unlike the fall where the kids have had a summer off from conversation in classrooms with the language. So they're usually in pretty good shape. So that's one question that's come up. Another one is about extracurricular activities and the range. And I mentioned a little bit earlier, but I think I just got a note from the RD in France, and this girl started her own a cappella group with the other students. And so it's not only connecting them outside, but the students within the school find each other and do some fun stuff together. And in fact, in France, they've also decided to do a spirit committee and do surprise stuff for other students. So that's just nice to see. And the question about events coming up, as you know, that we're now back in full swing doing through Susan McLean and our advancement office doing a number of events. So keep an eye out for that. And the big event that we'll be doing next year is a celebration of SYA's 60th in Spain, since that was our first campus. And so we will do a 60th celebration then. So mark that on your calendars of April of 2025 for that. Let's see. And then finally, another question came up, and then I'll turn over to you, Holland, and then we'll catch other questions. But how can you help SYA? And I think Holland and I really did hit on this hard, and I'll make the plea, which is I think you are our best ambassadors. So while we have a terrific group of admissions reps who are now fanning the country and talking with interested students, mainly at member schools, but please, anyone any promising students, talk to them, and that would be really, really helpful. So why don't we go to that, and then I'll pick up other questions. I'll look through those. Okay, so there you go, Holland. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Tom. So great. So today we welcome 2 wonderful members of the SYA community, Kelly Thomson and Anne Unverzagt. And I am delighted to introduce both of them as our award winners for this year. And I'll start by introducing Kelly, who is the winner of the Distinguished Alumni Award for this year. So Kelly Thomson, France, class of 1996, is a film producer whose work explores topics that challenge our assumption about human societies, culture, and their development. After Ren, Kelly went to UC Santa Cruz and then decided to take a little time off and went to Senegal, where she worked on a film with her older sister. And that was a turning point. We'll hear a little bit more about that when we talk to Kelly. She continued her education at NYU and spent the second semester of her junior year in Senegal again. After she produced an independent documentary called Savage Memory, which is about the founding father of British anthropology, which sounds fascinating to me. She went to work for Vital Pictures in Boston, where she began to partner with director Llewellyn Smith. And together, she and Smith have made 6 documentaries for PBS, including Poisoned Water, about the water crisis in Flint, Michigan, American Denial, which explores the power of unconscious biases, and others. Sorry, I'm jumping through. You have such a rich biography. I'm jumping a little through it. But their most recent film for Nova is Computers versus Crime, which seems so relevant, exploring the problems of trying to use artificial intelligence to fight crime and the inherent biases that are built into AI systems. And together with Llewellyn Smith, she's been nominated twice for Emmys. I'll let her talk about her current project again when we go into some questions. Kelly inspires her audiences through her voice and the story she chooses to tell. In her own way, she feels the films she makes are helping to increase our understanding of the world around us and make it a better place. And I would certainly agree with that statement. And I say congratulations, Kelly, on being selected by unanimous vote of the board to receive our Distinguished Alumni Award.
Thank you so much. It's a real honor. Yeah.
Well, great. And I think I'll go ahead and introduce Anne, and then we'll jump into some questions for you both. Does that sound good? Okay. And today I also introduce Anne Unverzagt. She is the widow of Rick Goddard, France, class of 1969, who has been awarded posthumously, sadly, our Stephen M. Foster Exemplary Service Award. And thank you so much for being here on behalf of Rick. And we miss him very, very much. And a little bit about Rick. Rick was a stalwart supporter of school year abroad for decades, always one to roll up his sleeves and get to work. Rick served as his class correspondent, was a member of the Philanthropy Council, assisted the admissions team by interviewing prospective SYA students, was an active volunteer for the campaign for SYA, and gave to the SYA fund for 43 consecutive years. He is tied with another donor for the most consecutive years giving to SYA. He died in March of 2023, and his wish was to have memorial gifts made to SYA. A quote from Rick that is family referenced sums up his life's work, especially his dedication to and passion for SYA. He said, "I think the most important thing we can do as humans is to create opportunity for others." So a little bit more about Rick. He was born in South Bend, Indiana, and was the 5th child in a family of 14. He had a natural gift for languages, and I'll let Anne tell the story of how he found SYA when we talk a little later. And he had a wonderful year in Rennes. After school year abroad, he attended Oberlin College. He majored in French and theater, spent his junior year in Paris and Florence, where he studied art, culture, literature, and language. He spent the next 2 years doing community organizing in Virginia and North Carolina, organizing majority Black populations who'd been disenfranchised. And in 1976, after his job inspired him to do so, he went to Washington and Lee University School of Law in Lexington, Virginia, and graduated in 1979 with the Order of the Coif Honors. He joined Calfee, Hunter, and Griswold after law school and spent his entire 42-year career there as a litigator until his retirement in the end of 2020. Loyalty is clearly one of his strongest characteristics. Rick believed strongly in service to others in his community. And in addition to SYA, he was involved with musical organizations, youth services organizations, family services organizations, educational work. He was just a man who gave his life to others through and through. And on a personal note, he was a fly fisherman, a cook, a husband, and a father to 4 accomplished children. So congratulations to Rick through Anne on being selected by unanimous vote of the Board of Trustees to receive the Stephen Foster Service Award.
Thank you very much, Holland, and thank you to the board and to everyone who grew to appreciate Rick and all that he did, because he loved School Year Abroad, and it was clearly the most significant thing he ever did in his life. So thank you very much.
You are welcome, and that is music to everyone's ears, and SYA loved him right back. So so I think it might be great to start with, I think our audience would love to hear how both Kelly and Rick came to SYA. What brought you to SYA? How did you find out about it? And what made you decide to go? Kelly, do you want to go ahead and start?
Sure, yeah. So I grew up in Medfield, Massachusetts. So I went to a Medfield Public High School, and I'd say not completely disaffected teen, but I was, I wasn't quite in my element there, and my parents and I started discussing possibly going to France for a year to learn French and to immerse ourselves there, and it didn't seem like it was going to pan out. So we started. I credit my dad, started really looking into programs and came across SYA, and it completely transformed my life.
Great to hear. And Anne, how did Rick find SYA?
Well, Rick was at a public high school in Mishawaka, Indiana, and as you said earlier, from a very, very large family. And he had a French teacher named Leah Silver. And Leah got somehow information about School Year Abroad, and it was just in its first year in REN, the French program. And she thought Rick would thrive in this kind of opportunity. So she asked him, and he looked at the pamphlet and said, sure. And he handed it to his parents and said, if you can get a full scholarship, you can go. So without knowing anything about what he was getting into, he decided that he passed whatever test it was to take, and has thanked Leah Silver for the rest of her life. Every year he would thank her, along with Walter Bergen, who was his math teacher, who directed him to Oberlin, and certainly, and most important, not most important, but certainly very important, the fabulous DeMare family, where Rick was lived and has loved them ever since. And he every year would write to Leah Silver, Walter Bergen, and members of the DeMare family to thank them for the opportunity and for enriching his life.
Ah, that's so wonderful to hear, and I love that you both shared stories of finding SYA in meaningful ways, although very different ways, and I think that still holds true. You have talked a little bit about Anne, about the impact that SYA had on Rick and how it stayed with him through his life. I don't know if there's any other specifics that you would like to share. And then Kelly, after Anne has added anything she'd like, I'd love to hear too what some of your key takeaways from the year were, and just how it has stuck with you, and with Rick through the years.
Well, in Rick's case, he was an irrepressible person. And his experience in that year didn't just enrich, it absolutely changed the entire direction of his life. And what it created, I think, for him was a tremendous curiosity. And he went in very naive to this experience and became very curious. And he became intellectually curious, but also culturally curious. And it changed his perspective. He had a very limited experience. I don't think he even left the state of Indiana except one time to go to a White Sox game with his little league team. He realized that there's a world out there and there's opportunities. And he was very clear that given the opportunity he was given, that he would spend the rest of his life creating opportunities for everyone else. And that became a very important piece of his life.
Yeah. I think I'd echo that. I think I went in, from this very small town, and my world just opened up, and it kind of all of a sudden seemed like anything was possible, and I could go anywhere and learn anything, and, just rise to my best self. So it was really eye-opening in that sense, particularly all the travel I did while I was there, all the people I met, and also just the curriculum at SYA, just from kind of my public school education to these very enriching courses I was taking, were pretty eye-opening. And then just, long-term, it also opened me up to being able to speak French and to West Africa, which is where I ended up, several times, and have continued to go back to for projects, which was even a kind of a bigger cultural immersion for me in some ways, just because it was so disconnected from what I knew. So yeah, it really just opened up what was possible in so many ways.
And Kelly, I would love to hear you elaborate a little bit more on your work and the work that you've done, and the projects that you've worked on, and anything that any particularly strong ties that you talk about, the language, but other strong ties that you can, make to your time at SYA or not. If you just also talk about your work.
Yeah. I mean, so in terms of my work, I mean, a lot of my work has been focused on really issues of social justice, looking at, inequities, or issues around race and class, and really trying to, bring awareness to those through a variety of issues. I think one that I'm most proud of, which was actually listed in the blurb, is called American Denial, and it was produced over 10 years ago, but it was really kind of before its time in a lot of ways, looking at structural racism and implicit bias, and really bringing storytelling, animation to, and accessibility to those topics before, at a time where it wasn't as ubiquitously talked about. So yeah, I guess I'd say in terms of connections to SYA and the and what that's brought to my work, I think it's a sense of adventure, a sense of cultural empathy. I mean, in order to tell some of these stories and to put yourself into the situations I put myself in, sometimes you really do have to have that grounding and awareness. And I think a lot of that does stem back to that 16-year-old girl, in Rennes, France, just figuring it all out. So yeah.
That's a great phrase, cultural empathy, and certainly I think that is one of the hallmarks of an SYA education, and I think that social justice and cultural empathy were very much at play in Rick's life too, and much of his work was centered around issues that looking at the way others have been perhaps wronged by society. Would you like to talk a little bit more about some of the things that he was involved with in his career? And
well, when he went to Oberlin and then he goes to the community organizing, and this is fresh from this life-altering experience, and I cannot emphasize enough how important that was. I think Kelly just referred to the 16-year-old in Rem, and what the impact of that is just so enormous. But Rick, when he did something, did it fully. So when he goes to, and he has natural gifts. He has natural gifts for languages, and so he immerses himself in things. And then he gives to others. And this was true when he was doing community organizing in Petersburg, Virginia, and into North Carolina. It was true in his career as a lawyer, because he was a litigator, but he in a large firm here in Cleveland. But one of the most significant things said about Rick in this past year was his mentoring, the way he would help everybody else, and how he would always be open to mentoring women who joined the firm, minority lawyers who joined the firm. He always made it not a practice, it made it a point of his life to help other people, to mentor. And I think when he got involved in so many different organizations here in Cleveland, he did so with the idea of making it better for everybody around him. These are life lessons that he learned as a result of school year abroad.
So powerful to hear both of your stories, and just thank you so much for sharing them with us today. We have gotten some questions too from the audience that's watching, and Kelly, there are a number of questions about your time in Senegal, and people are very interested to hear how you enjoyed living there, what you found about the culture and the life there, and your life there, the art scene, the culture scene, and if you could talk a little bit more about that would be wonderful.
Sure. Yeah. So I think you mentioned I took a year off after my first year of college. I went to UC Santa Cruz, and I enrolled in a program that did a few weeks of just kind of touring around Senegal and indulging your interests. I was really interested in women's issues. I was really interested in topics around religion. And so I did this 3-week tour. It was fabulous. And then I decided to stay on for 4 months and live with a family in a very small town called Diofior. And I, had a family, and my mother was so protective of me. My mother, Hadi, I slept in the living room. And I worked with this English teacher at the middle school. They had this word processor, and we so this is in, I guess it was 1998. And so we taught all the other middle school teachers how to use this word processor, and it has since gone on to become a a computer center and kind of in this small town, and been replicated in other places. The person I partnered with really took it off. But it was fantastic. I was, it was. I experienced a lot of culture shock, and that was and that kind of discomfort, and that brought me a lot of growth, and I fell in love with the culture and fell in love with Senegal as a place, so which has brought me back there, for then again for university in my junior year of college, and then to do a film project there as well, which is 10 years in the making. It will come out at some point. But yeah. So I hope that answers some of, yeah.
Maybe you need a few more trips to Senegal just to keep working on the film. It sounds like you want to go back again.
Essentially.
Oh, that is great. And in the vein of travel, and you mentioned how close Rick was to his French family. And so did you and Rick travel back to Rennes to see them? And did they come to see you? And do you want to talk a little bit about that ongoing relationship?
Rick and I, when we got married, did not go on a honeymoon. And when our youngest child went to college, we decided to take a trip. And I said, the first place I want to go to is Rennes. I want to see where it was that your life was transformed so much. And so we did. And we met with almost all the members of his French family were very graciously welcomed and fed, and several of their children, the siblings' children, came and spent summers with us, one each summer. And then Rick went back with two of our children in, I can't remember which year, it was the 50th, sort of the 50th celebration, and had a fabulous time. And Rick always wrote, and they always wrote back. And he was just truly, that was his French family, and very much a French family, not for a year, but for a lifetime. And that was terrific.
That can be such a wonderful relationship, the host family student.
In this case, yeah. I thought it was a small family. There were 6 children in the family.
Small for him.
Everyone.
Hey, Holland, I'd like to just jump in here, and I want to thank you, Anne, because Holland, you mentioned earlier that Rick had wanted his memory to be with SYA, and there were many donations that came in, and so we have purposed that to have a discretionary fund for each of the resident directors to give to when they see it, to financial aid students who need something that they can't have, and because of finances. So it's a wonderful tribute to Rick, and I think he'd be very happy about that.
Certainly would. The whole idea about spending money, when Rick was there, he didn't have very much, and there were opportunities he could not take advantage of. And when you were just discussing, Tom, about all the getting involved in the community for the school, where the schools are, and extracurricular activities and things, we are certainly hopeful that this fund will help in whatever way possible to make it a level playing field for full scholarship students. There's in my opinion, every person who participates and is a student of SYA, their life is enriched. But for students like Rick and Kelly, their lives are changed. And the change is something that is so, there are lots of Rick Goddards and Kellys out there. And I hope that people listening today will, and Rick would certainly hope that they will find ways to support SYA as much as possible. to create these life-changing experiences for Kelly's and Rick's.
Absolutely. We will carry that on.
I don't think, I don't think anyone could say it better. Thank you, Anne. Kelly, do you want to add anything before we toss it back to Tom to take on a couple last questions?
I think I echo this, and I can only hope my kids will go. I'll be rooting for them, and I think handing on this opportunity to as many people as we can is the best we can do.
Great. Thank you, Kelly. You're planting those seeds with your kids. That's great.
Thank you both so much, and congratulations again on being our award recipients this year.